On today's episode of the Locked On NHL podcast, the Edmonton Oilers survive a late scare to advance to the Western Conference Finals, and Dallas advances. Goalie interference or not?
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Locked On NHL podcast. We are your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We thank you for making Locked On NHL your first choice each and every day. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any new episodes, especially with us getting set for the conference finals coming up later this week. Today's episode of Locked On NHL is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. On today's episode of Locked On NHL, we will discuss the Game 7 win for the Edmonton Oilers. A slow start for Vancouver. They finished with a flurry, but it was too little too late. We'll talk about what went wrong for Vancouver. We'll also talk about controversy between Colorado and Dallas. Goalie interference or not. And we'll also get you set for the Western Conference Finals between Dallas and Edmonton. My name is Seth Toupal, host of Locked On Wild, one half of the dynamic duo for your Western Conference Tuesday, joined by JD Young of Locked On Sharks. JD, a fun weekend of hockey, and it culminated with the Game 7 between Edmonton and Vancouver. We're hopping on the microphone pretty quickly after that game finished. So Edmonton fans still celebrating at this point. Yes. And Vancouver kind of just looking at what went wrong here as the Oilers win the final two games of the series to get it to Game 7. They had to win Game 6, and
yep.
Vancouver, it's just, I think the big operative phrase here is, missed opportunities.
Yeah, I think you have to point to the 4-minute power play where you get literally nothing during that opportunity. And we know power plays are going, especially in Game 7s, they have to be egregious. And to get a 4-minute power play in a Game 7, I've luckily witnessed a Game 7 with a 5-minute major penalty, but it's very hard to get those opportunities when you do. And when you get them, you have to take advantage. And especially this is a game where it felt like Vancouver just didn't have guys who had been in this moment, right? You saw the way they started this game, slow. They couldn't get any shots. They were passing up opportunities. And then when they were handed an opportunity, they just couldn't do anything with it. And, this Vancouver team we think of them as still being a lot of young guys, but they've kind of been around together, but they just haven't had these opportunities. And while Edmonton, they've never, made it to the cup yet with this group, they still have been in a ton of playoff series and have been through kind of these battles. And I think that's where that experience showed up tonight is they came out ready to play, and Vancouver took, 50 minutes to get to find their game, and they made a push, granted. But if you had started this game on time, we could be easily talking about how Vancouver, came in and took care of business here.
Yeah, the shots were at one point, I think, 22-4 in favor of Edmonton. And, if not for Artur Silovs just making it was said on X, it's 100% accurate, making some of the best saves of the season. Insane in saves. A Game 7.
Yeah.
He just went nuts, and he's the only reason. It's kind of ironic. He's the only reason the game didn't spiral out of control early on. I even saw somebody post to that same level, like the only reason this isn't a 3-0 game is because of the saves that Silovs is making, and then all of a sudden it's 3-0 Edmonton. But It's an interesting dichotomy here too, because you look at what led to Edmonton winning this game was goals from the supporting cast, the guys around McDavid and Draisaitl. And to kind of keep it on the what went wrong for Vancouver angle, I feel like for Vancouver, they needed one of JT Miller, Elias Pettersson, or Quinn Hughes. You need one of your top guys to take the lead, especially with it being 3-0. And yes, they did make the comeback in the final 10 minutes, but you just, in an elimination game, you can't afford to start that slowly. I know they're dealing with the loss of Brock Boeser, which was massive.
Yep.
Can't be understated how big of a factor that was. But, these are why the big guys make the big bucks. These are why the guys like JT Miller, like Elias Pettersson, this is why they're paid, is for moments like this to be the one to step up and say, hey, don't worry, guys, I'll get us a goal. And you look at the numbers here, and combined, you got one shot for JT Miller. You get 2 shots for Elias Pettersson. That's not enough. That's not enough for me.
That's not. And it's like you said, like game 7s, especially if your team comes out flat, that's your, I know Quinn Hughes is not the most vocal guy, and, Pettersson's also one of their capped on the leadership group. You have to come out and do something. We've seen Pettersson big hits, whatever, something to get the team going, right? And you saw that crowd dying to have something to cheer for in this game. But yeah, it's kind of weird because McDavid throughout his career has always been like, can we get McDavid support? Can we get McDavid support? This game, he does literally nothing. And I mean, he had a terrible series, to be honest, right? Except for, I think, the one game was pretty bad, but he got that support from, guys like Hyman, Cody Ceci, more like Kaka PP. I can never not think about that tweet every time I hear his name. But like it's you, especially with Brock Boeser, who has been their most clutch guy. Anytime they need a big goal, Boeser's there, right? You think about the hat trick earlier this playoff run. Like anytime the Canucks need something big, it's always been Boeser. With him being out for this game and what was going to expect to be the rest of the playoffs with his blood clotting issue, and you hope he gets better with that. You needed someone to kind of step up, and it's disappointing because this Canucks team is such a fun young group of guys, but they don't have that guy who's kind of been through it right now, and that I think the moment was just too big for them, to be honest, right now.
Yeah, and to kind of pull it full circle, obviously at some point those types of losses are just going to be too much to overcome. Like Thatcher Demko, Casey DeSmith, losing Brock Boeser, like those are big pieces of your group. But again, like if you would have told me, if we knew everything that we knew going into game 7, no Brock Boeser, all things considered, and you ask me, okay, who needs to step up? Who needs to be the one to make the play to get the for instance, the game time goal? Vancouver got it to 3-2 with about 4 minutes to play. It's got to be one of those three. Like, is that fair to throw all of it at their feet for the last 2 games? You gotta throw a good majority of it, because those are the guys that just need to be the ones to
those are your best players.
Yeah.
They need to be their best players at the best times.
That's what they're paid to do.
That's what they're paid to do. They are in there for the most crucial moments. They're paid the big bucks. They're supposed to, and hopefully this is a learning experience, and this team still is, this foundation and core of guys are still going to be around. And we see this a lot in sports where you have to kind of lose before you learn to win. And this could be one of those moments where they look back, and yes, that game 7, you're going to be thinking about that game 7 all summer long. Every time they go to the rink, this summer. They're going to be thinking about that Game 7 and what they could have done differently. And maybe this is the start of kind of this Canucks run here, is that losing in Game 7. But they're going to have so many regrets with the way they played, especially the first period, and especially that 4-minute power play of just, again, not getting any sort of momentum in this game. It's going to sit over this franchise the entire summer.
Yeah, because what have we, and we'll talk about this when we discuss the Western Conference Finals. I mean, the Edmonton goalie situation, it has been pretty well stated. Stuart Skinner has been good, but the more shots you throw on these guys, the more opportunities that you get to be able to potentially come back. And 2 goals in those final 10 minutes, no coincidence that that's when the shots started to really come in. And it's like, if you would have just done that to begin the game, then we'd maybe be talking about a completely different result. We'd be applauding Vancouver being able to handle all this adversity and be able to outlast an Edmonton team. But
we'd be talking about, why did Connor McDavid have a terrible series and cost his? Yeah, that's what we do here. Is you got to find someone to blame.
That's the duality. That's the duality of sports, is that you can go in the span of a couple of minutes. You can go from the hero to the scapegoat. That's just how it works. So Edmonton lives to fight another series. We'll talk more about their matchup with Dallas coming up, but we got to talk about the Dallas-Colorado series because there's a lot that happened. A lot that happened in that deciding game. So we will discuss Dallas-Colorado, goalie interference, yay or nay. We'll decide when we come back here on today's episode of the Locked On NHL podcast. Today's episode of Locked On NHL is brought to you by FanDuel. Folks, it is winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL playoffs, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. If you're in a place that you are able to, if you're in a state that you're able to, Minnesota Timberwolves are in uncharted territory. And me, as a host of a Minnesota show, this brings me a ton of joy to be able to be in a conference final for the first time in 20 years. So that's a great spot to start, because the Minnesota Timberwolves are going to be looking to get off to a good start against the Dallas Mavericks. $5 bet. If you win, you're free rolling with $150 in bonus bets to use on both conference finals in the NHL and both conference finals in the NBA. So if you go that route, if you go another route, regardless, head to FanDuel.com/locked-on to make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to today's episode of the Locked On NHL podcast. Once again, we are your team every day, and we thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen each and every day. Seth Toupal and JD Young here, discussing now Dallas and Colorado. And I don't know, there was no controversy in that game whatsoever. Not even
pretty clean
bit.
series, start to finish, no controversy. No, in the year 2024, how do we still not know what goalie controversy or goalie interference is? I think if the defender clearly pushes the forward into the goalie, like, what's the forward, like, what's he supposed to do there? And yeah, that was terrible call there Dallas, puck don't lie. They were able to come back in double overtime and finish this thing off. But this game should have been over in the first overtime. This I don't know how you can make that call in that spot. And it's not even like reviewable, because on the ice, there was just no chance, because on the ice it was called no goal. Like that is an egregious call. And Dallas, again, credit to them for not getting low and coming back, and they dominated that whole overtime, and it felt like they were going to just eventually win that game. But brutal call.
You know, it is funny because we just are getting to the point where it feels like this is becoming more and more commonplace, because I don't think it's any coincidence that we seem to be having more and more controversial calls, controversial replays. The more not only the technology improves, but the more that it's relied upon. It seems like we're going down kind of this slippery slope of, if you can frame by frame, and they do this with offsides, and it drives me insane. If you can frame by frame it and find even enough width to slide a piece of paper between somebody's skate and the blue line, like we have to draw the line somewhere. Like,
or if you're going to do it, like, at least, like, we could put a puck in the chip and we can know if it crosses a line, instead of having to have this, like, do I see that? Like, if you're going to, like, embrace technology, like, don't half measure it. And I think that's the problem that we have, is, like, we have, like, the skaters all wear chips in their jerseys. We know exactly where they're at. We know exactly how fast they're going. We know exactly their placement on the ice at all given times. Like, if you're going to embrace it, like, just fully embrace it. Don't do this half measure stuff. And that's where you get in trouble. It's like, well, by this angle, he looks like he could have run into him, or by this angle. And it's like, I think that's the problem, especially with these big series, and as the games become more and more intense and the stakes become bigger, is these judgment calls here. Like, again, I've watched hockey my entire, most of my life, and you're still like, I guess that could be goalie interference. Spin the big wheel of goalie interference. Is it goalie interference or not? And it feels very much up to whatever one the stakes are, because they're not going to call that in an overtime game, and they don't want the series to end like that. And two, just whatever the ref is kind of feeling that day.
I mean, it is amazing that. And it seems like there's one in every sport. There's just one thing where it's like, we have this broad kind of assumption as to what
pass interference, goalie interference. Catch. Yeah. What's a catch? It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
And it feels to me like, and I'm doing this for the sheer, comparison. I'm just going to throw this out there. When Congress was debating the definition of pornography, they're like, it when you see it.
You see it. Yep.
And it's the same thing with goalie interference. Like, it's pretty clear to tell when a goalie is impeded and their ability to make a play on a puck is inhibited. Like, it's pretty easy to tell if it's coincidental contact. That's one thing, but if the goalie can't make a play on the puck, that's got to be a penalty.
Unless it's the defender, his own teammate, who's causing the problem. That's the problem. It's like when your defender comes barreling in and just crushes a dude into your goalie, and then of course, like, the forward has no chance to get out of the way. Or, he's established himself there, like he's allowed to do, especially outside the paint. And then, the defender comes in and just is like kamikaze his way into the net there, that way to try to get him out of there. Like, you have to take that into context with it of like, yes, this is clearly, this is not the forward's fault. If anything, it's goalie interference on your own defender because he's not defending right.
And this, there have been fascinating examples of this, even back to the regular season. Like, I remember one vividly where, for the Wild, Ryan Hartman was called for goalie interference because he was pushed from behind, lost an edge, and went careening into the goalie. And it's like, he was very clearly pushed from behind. Like, what is he supposed to do about it?
Yeah.
It's frustrating that we still, like you said, we're at this point, we're at 2024. 2025 is a few months away, and we still have no idea. Like we have no concrete standard as to what goalie interference is. We're still going frame by frame on offsides. You can challenge whether a play was offsides from like 30 seconds prior if a goal is scored. It's like if you have to go to frame by frame, I feel like there should be something in place that inhibits you from reviewing it. Just my 2 cents. That's all I'm going to say.
Someone who took advantage of a offsides call in a Game 7 against Colorado, I'm going to plead the fifth.
You're going to take the win, and you're going to say, okay, I'm not going to tempt fate here because sometimes it goes with you, sometimes it goes against you.
It tends to even out, but yeah, it's again. I think we could have easily been talking about a Game 7 from from the Colorado Dallas series, but. To kind of get into quickly wrap that up, Dallas was the better team. They outplayed Colorado this entire series, and we'll talk about Dallas Edmonton here in a second. But that team, like we talked about last week, it's deep. They have contributions from everybody, and Ottinger I think is really starting to find his game. And it's gonna be a tough challenge I think for Edmonton here.
Yeah, they're going to be going through the meat grinder. And so let's give a little bit of a preview here of Dallas Edmonton, the Western Conference Finals coming right up. We'll discuss as we finish today's episode of Locked On NHL after this. Final segment of today's episode of the Locked On NHL podcast. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen each and every day. Make sure to join us all throughout the week with a wide panel of hosts talking NHL at large, Western Conference Tuesday, Eastern Conference Wednesday, power rankings on Thursday, and more at large NHL discussion to end the week as well. A great crew for Locked On NHL. So make sure you subscribe if you have not already. Yes. Then you got us on Tuesday holding down the fort, and looking forward to what should be a very interesting Western Conference Finals between Edmonton and Dallas. And you've got we can start with the star power for Edmonton versus the depth of Dallas, because Dallas maybe doesn't have the top end play. Who does? Who has?
Nobody has.
Who has a McDavid and a Draisaitl? Really, nobody. But you've got those two guys leading the way for Edmonton, and Jason Robertson, very, very good player, but it's more of a full team that Dallas employs, and that's not to say that Edmonton doesn't have. They've got Zach Hyman, they've got Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, they've got plenty of guys that are capable, but it very much is like the lead dogs versus the depth here in this series, which is going to be fascinating to see who wins out there.
I think it's Dallas this year, just the way they're playing right now. And yes, they don't have the star power, like you said, they don't have the star power of a guy like McDavid and stuff, but they have plenty of stars on the stars that are there. We talked last week about Wyatt Johnson and how he is turning into a superstar in front of our very eyes. And that's going to be a large task for him to try to keep up. But, you saw Pavelski start to kind of get things going here. You talked about Robertson. If these guys who kind of had quiet series last series, now if they can start producing here, but I think it's going to be that middle six of Dallas that's going to be able to take advantage. And Edmonton hasn't really faced a team like this, right? You haven't faced Jake Ottinger type of goalie. They've gotten by playing some goalies who are not as celebrated, we'll say, as a Jake Ottinger. And I think this is going to be a huge, huge advantage for Dallas, especially a little bit more rest here. I wouldn't be surprised if Edmonton starts game one quickly, based off coming off the Game 7 high. You kind of see that a lot. And with Dallas going to be having close to a week off, but still, I think this is Dallas' series to lose. I have Dallas in 5. I'm going to give them the gentleman's sweep. Give them the 5 because I just think they're too deep. They're too good, and I don't like what I've seen from McDavid in this past series.
Yeah, this is going to be. There are a couple of things that jump out to me right off the bat. Like just looking at the stats from the postseason so far. Dallas 29% on the power play. Edmonton at 37.5%. And so both of those power plays have cashed in so far this postseason. But listen to this. Edmonton 91.4% on the penalty kill through 12 games. Dallas is at 69.2% for their penalty kill so far this postseason. But again, like they have found a way to win. They found a way to outlast the Vegas Golden Knights. They have gotten past the Colorado Avalanche by the fact that they're giving up 2.38 goals per game. And so Jake Ottinger really stepping up there. Can Stewart Skinner match? That's if we're looking at like a big matchup that goes in that same vein as McDavid and Draisaitl versus the Dallas, the offense. It's Skinner versus Ottinger for me because Stewart Skinner is going to have to be at his best in this game because Ottinger's on a roll.
Yeah. Ottinger's been playing really well, and like I thought he had a little bit of a slow start to the playoffs, but he's really, like I said, I think he's really found his game in the against the Avalanche series, and I think also Dallas's defense. Right, you look at the way that they have played. You played a very tight, very close game, 7-game series against Vegas, but they were able to keep Vegas's offense stifled, even against that high-powered Colorado offense. I know they had some issues with guys who weren't there, but again, really kind of stifling that Dallas offense. And with the lack of depth that Edmonton has or doesn't have, I think Dallas's defensive structure is going to be huge in this. And I know the penalty kill has been off so far, but before tonight, Edmonton's power play had been, I think they had gone like 0 for 10 or 0 for 11 before they finally cashed in. Ew. So I hear that with their power, with the special teams. I think the 5-on-5 play is going to carry Dallas, and I think their defense is going to suffocate Edmonton.
Let's talk a little bit about McDavid and Draisaitl to finish because they've gotten to this point before. Got to the Western Conference Finals against Colorado. The Mike Smith center ice goal allowed will forever haunt this team. If Edmonton does not find a way to get this done, we've talked about this, it seems like on a yearly basis, basically ever since McDavid and Draisaitl started to really ascend.
Yep.
At some point, if you're Edmonton, and I'm not saying this necessarily for like the people that follow the Oilers closely, the fans, like because they know, but at some point you run out of chances. At some point, a player like McDavid, a player like Draisaitl, they see that this is just the ceiling that this team, as currently constructed, has, and there have been opportunities to try to kind of add some new pieces around those two guys. Mm-hmm. But it really feels like if Edmonton doesn't really turn this into a deep cup run, at what point is McDavid going to say, I can't do it here? Like,
it's getting to that point as we've both been fans of teams that have plenty of playoff failures, some of ours more highlighted, and you wonder if it's going to be McDavid and Draisaitl, the new Patrick Marleau and Joe Thornton, of just always getting there, but always kind of being the bridesmaids, never being able to kind of get over the hump. And I think this is, especially right now with the kind of where the league is at. I think this is their time and to potentially do this. You look at some of the kind of up and coming teams that are going to be kind of pushing here soon. And while McDavid and Draisaitl, they're going to continue to be great, but like it's not going to be long before McDavid's going to need another contract, and Draisaitl's due for a contract after this year. And you're going to have to kind of make some decisions. And like you said, if they can win with this core, this group of guys here. So this is their time to just be that I'm the best player for McDavid, right? I'm the best player on earth, and I'm just going to take over a series and put on the Superman cape and be that guy. And again, like he's played well, but we just haven't seen, kind of the production from McDavid that we expect, right? I mean, this is a guy who could easily put up 5 points a night without blinking an eye. And it feels like it's been a bit of a struggle for him. And I don't know if he's fully healthy or what the story is right now, but he got the support he needed in this round. But I think in the Western Conference Finals, he's going to be otherworldly for them to beat this Dallas team.
Yeah, you're going to need those guys that get paid to do it. And just to kind of finish on the outlook for the Oilers, they have 14 players on the roster after this year. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 unrestricted free agents on the roster, and they have projected $9.83 million in cap space. So
that's not a lot of space for needing a lot of guys on your team. So yeah.
It would behoove the Oilers to do it now. So we'll see if they do. We'll see if they get off to a good start.
What's your prediction for the series?
I'm going Dallas. I am gonna say 6. I think we'll get one. I'm saying 6 because I think we maybe get either one Stuart Skinner game where he really takes over, or
plays out of his mind. Yeah.
Or a McDavid Draisaitl where they just are overwhelming Dallas. I feel like we get one of the two. They'll win a close game, but Dallas has, I think they check all the boxes to advance in this series. So,
yep.
We'll see how it plays out, but that will do it for today's episode of Locked On NHL. Once again, thank you everybody for tuning in each and every day. Make sure to hit the like button if you're watching on YouTube before you head out for the day. And make sure if you're listening on one of our many audio platforms, whether it be Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, whether you're listening in your car, on your phone, on your computer, or if you like to cast to your TV, there are people that listen that way as well. We thank you for making Locked On NHL your first choice here throughout the day. You can find new episodes of Locked On NHL every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We'll see you next time.